one of the things you had mentioned was this idea that you had taken this sabbatical or whatever the
Whatever
non-dramatic
the
term
term
is
is.
that one would want to use to that for, 5 years. And it sounds as if by doing that, you were able to step back and get that a different perspective on your career that maybe took you in a different direction. And there may be people who say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to take 5 years off. But do you feel like there's a way that people can experience the benefit of what you learned in your sabbatical in a way that's practical for maybe a greater majority of writers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let me first just knock down I realize that I didn't give you much to work with, but let me just knock down sabbatical because it sounds like it sounds like a rich person thing to like, I'm going to go travel the world. It was just that I didn't want to do anything involved with writing other than writing. And I stopped doing all the public facing stuff. So I was still writing books, but that was all I was doing. And I think that when I came up out of that and I said, okay, now I want to sell these books because by the way, and don't let me lose the track here, is I realized that for me, the art is not just storytelling. For me, the art is everything around it. It's communicating with people. It's building kind of a world and curiosity. It's building a brand, like a visual and spoken and articulated brand is very interesting to me. That's part of my art. But for me, this process, okay, I'm going to give you an odd answer. So let's see what you think about this. Is I think I have grown very introspective. I don't know that I always was, but I think I'm very curious about why I think the ways that I do and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I've got this metaphor that I've kind of developed of for those of you who are into vinyl or have, are old enough to remember when records were all there was, the idea of if you wanted to skip to a different song, you picked up the needle and you put it down in a new place. And I think that so many of us go through life just playing the same track and you're just letting it play forward. And I think every once in a while, I think of that as a reset. It might not be a perfect metaphor. So I see this with my kids. So my kids are almost 16 and 19, and they're changing so fast that the only way that I can kind of like stay current with them in terms of this is the person I'm relating with now, rather than this is the person that I used to be relating with, and I'm still hanging on to that old image, is that metaphor of like, I'm going to disconnect from where I am right now, scramble, scratch everything. And I think of this as like lifting up the needle and putting it back down to where they actually are today. So with my kids, it's like, oh, okay, I shouldn't be treating my daughter like she's 12 anymore because now she's almost 16 and I get to know that new person. And I think I do that with a lot. I think I've developed a habit of trying to pick up the needle, trying to disconnect from what is currently happening and then question my own assumptions. And when I do that, then I find, oh, there's no reason to do what I'm doing. Or why am I doing that? That used to be something that I did back when this was true, but that's no longer true. But out of momentum, I did that. So, my actual specific advice, which I think is a little weird for this, is I meditate and I spend a lot of time trying to be quiet. I take a lot of walks. I do spend a lot of time it's metacognition. It's thinking about thinking. I want to understand the ways that I think, the reasons that I do what I do, and not just do anything just because it's always been done. And I think if you do that, then you start to say, so I'll give you an example. So I was doing a lot of stuff that was author facing once I got back into this, in addition to the Art of Noticing podcast. And it's a lot of work and that's fine. But there was this moment where I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to do another seminar. I'm not going to hold a boot camp. I'm not going to write more nonfiction books for authors. Why do I feel that this is something I need to do? Because by the way, the parts that I let go of, I wasn't enjoying doing. So why would I do that? But it was a genuine epiphany. It was like, oh my God, how did I not notice that there's no purpose to this? Oh, by the way, it also wasn't effective. So it also wasn't growing. So why was I doing it? But I think that we have all sorts of things like that in our creative careers where we're either doing something because somebody told us once, or because we did it yesterday, or because we think that it looks like quitting if we stop it, or we think we'll be criticized if we do something weird. And I think if you try to just wipe the slate clean as much as you can and think about your own thought process from as objective a standpoint as you can, I think that's the key.
I love that, and it's a message that I love hearing myself because I'm a very organized person. I spent, many, many years in the corporate world as a project manager, and so I have
Mhm.
everything in a list. And I try to be very intentional about, when I get up, I get my tea, I sit down at the computer, I open up my list, and I try to be very intentional about saying, okay, what has bubbled to the top of the list is update my BookBub ads. Do I really wanna be doing
Mm.
that? Is that how I wanna be spending my time? Hey, do I even wanna be selling BookBub ads? And so I attempt to be very intentional about it, but it's very difficult because it's super easy to just get sucked into that. I don't know, BookBub ads has bubbled to the top of the list. That's what I'm gonna be doing this morning. And I really like that idea of stepping back and noticing other things, way of not letting yourself get sucked into that rut.